Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Star Wars The Force Awakens discussion video, and this one's going to be all about Poe Dameron, our pilot character from The Force Awakens. And yeah, he is a really interesting character to talk about because, you know, you just objectively kind of look at his role in the movie and it's just like, okay, cool, he's a pretty interesting character, hope we get more of him. You look at the internet reaction to him, and you would think he's the most amazing character of all time, given how incredibly well the internet fandom has taken to him. It's been a really interesting kind of journey just over the last couple of weeks the movie's been out to really see people just think of him as like the most amazing character of all time. Myself, I suppose I'm somewhere in the middle in that I came out of the movie initially and it was kind of like, okay, I like him. I want to see more of him. He, you could very much tell. So when I eventually found out that it was the case, that he was kind of meant to be killed off in this movie and not really play a part in the second half of the film, you could sort of tell just because there's such a gap between his like main appearance and then his appearance at the end. But I'm glad that they didn't kill him because I think he could play an interesting role in the films going forward. And Oscar Isaacs does a great job at playing his playing Poe, of course. Just the charisma that comes out, instant likability, even with the limited amount of screen time. Um, and then, I obviously I liked him. And then I read this book, Star Wars Before the Awakening, the kind of lead-in novel that kind of explains why Poe is in the position he's in. And he very much jumped up in my estimation because this book I feel gives you it gives you information on his backstory, who his parents are, why he is so eager to fight for the resistance, how he came to join the resistance and stuff like that. And that's important, and I feel I know the character better having read this book compared to just the film. So, if you're a big fan of Poe, you are one of those kind of part of that internet fandom that really loves Poe. Highly recommend that you check out this book. And I think the other place you get information from is the comic Star Wars Shattered Empire. That's where you learn about his parents some more. So, let's get into some proper discussion on him. Of the, I suppose, main characters, like the ones who got Disney Infinity figures, Rey, Finn, Poe, and Kylo, he has the least role in the movie. Though he is very important in that he's the first of our new kind of trio of hero characters that we see on screen. And it's kind of his movie for the first, 5-10 minutes. He's on the mission, he kind of starts the story, him and BB-8, BB-8's his droid, and you think he's going to be really important, and then there's a moment where, like, as far as we're aware, he's dead. Like, they didn't do the thing you'd expect them to do, where, like, okay, they get separated, but it's clear that they're alive. For most of the movie, we kind of do think he's dead. I personally didn't, because I suppose the trailers have kind of spoiled it in that we'd seen him in scenes flying his X-Wing on different planets, so we know he survived that. But it's just interesting that they did that. It's one of those things where, like, given the change that they made and actually keeping him as a character, they probably actually should have went back and had a scene where they did show him getting off the planet, that he did survive. And now that scene is in the Star Wars The Force Awakens novelization, in that it shows him waking up with a concussion after the crash, worrying, like, him kind of thinking, like, okay, Finn might have survived. He ejected before we landed. Where is he and stuff like that. So there's that, and then him with the help of a inhabitant of Jakku helping him get off the planet after he kind of proves himself to this guy. It's a quick scene, but it's one that got across some nice things for the character. It wasn't in the movie. Maybe it's a deleted scene that we'll see in the Blu-ray. Not really sure about that though. But straight away, I like that you get his character, like the charisma, what his personality is, kind of immediately, and that he's talking about, the generals were looking for this for a while to lure Santeca, and he's aware. You instantly get the idea that he knows Leia pretty well, and this book plus the scenes later on in the movie, I think confirm that she has a quite good relationship with Finn in the sense of he reminds her of a little bit of Luke, a little bit of Han, and she can kind of joke around with him, kind of on the same level as them, and especially with Leia, as I explained in the last video, a character who's kind of lost so much. For her to, be super friendly and kind of on that level with Poe shows how much she trusts him to send him on this mission to get information about Luke, and that's an interesting relationship I'll talk a little bit more about later. But obviously, the first scene on Jakku is the First Order attacking the village, and obviously you see him fighting a little bit on the ground, which is quite interesting. He's a pretty good shot. He's the one who kills Slip, one of a member of Finn's fire team, and that kind of prompts Finn's kind of change in kind of attitude going forward, and his kind of, I suppose, his awakening to like what's that he shouldn't be in the First Order. So it's interesting, a connection there with Finn, that like Poe killing this specific stormtrooper is kind of what sparks that change for Finn. But he's captured after that by Kylo after he lets BB-8 escape, and I'll talk about that now because you don't get too much on it, but you can tell that BB-8 is really is very close to Poe. Which I really like that relationship. It's kind of like Anakin and R2 from the kind of prequels / the Clone Wars show as well. He really cares about R2, and you can tell that Poe really cares about BB-8 more so than just he's a helpful droid. There is a closeness there in terms of two characters that I quite like, and just him, the moment where he's like sacrificing himself to let BB-8 get away with a piece of the map, and BB-8's worried that Poe won't make it, and especially like when Finn turns up later, you get a bit of sense of that kind of relationship come out. But yeah, he's captured by Kylo, and this is definitely the moment where I think the character is just completely sold to everyone. Everyone just straight away likes him. Just that moment where Kylo just stares at him, mask on, and Poe's just like, should I speak first? Like, what's going on here? Are you even looking at me? You have a mask on? I really don't get what you're going for here. It's just this moment where, like, yeah, like, he's a rebel. He's not going to help the Empire. He's not afraid in this situation. So I guess he would say something like that. It's a kind of, not a scene you often see, but it makes sense that, like, the villain, and it sort of only works because Kylo, we later find out, is a very young villain. And so he doesn't have the same presence as a Darth Vader. Like, if Poe had done this to a character who was kind of on the level of Darth Vader, you'd probably criticize the writing a bit, in the sense of like, oh, you just completely diminished him as a villain. But Kylo being so young, it works and gets across kind of a bit of Poe's nature, that he's kind of he's not afraid of any of this stuff. And especially later on when he's tortured by Kylo and he's not getting anything out of him with the normal torture. And it takes him doing the Force probe technique to him to actually get the information about BB-8 out of him. So that it kind of shows that, okay, Poe isn't like incredibly like Force sensitive, and that like he probably has a decently high midichlorian count to be such a skilled pilot, but not high enough to where you can actually like properly contact the Force. Like, he probably has good reactions, relatively strong in the Force, but not beyond that. I think the comics go into the idea that like his parents were given a Force sensitive tree by Luke for all their help, and he kind of grew up around it. So like it makes sense that he's like, I wouldn't say he's completely Force sensitive, but has like reflexes that would make him somewhat like that. So that's definitely interesting. But obviously the Force probe works and the information gets out. But then when they start up the Finn-Poe friendship, that's when the movie really takes off, because we're starting to see our new characters meet up, talk to each other, interact, and this one straight away works. And it works straight away because on Poe's side of things, he thinks he's just going to be in prison for a while. Like, he's not going to break or anything like that. He's obviously a bit sad that the information has gotten out, but as far as he's aware, BB-8 should be able to do something to get off the planet. But for the most part, he kind of thinks his mission has failed. And suddenly, like, this random stormtrooper comes over to him and he's just like, I'm helping you escape. And of course, Poe asks him, like, why? Why are you helping me escape? And Finn says, it's the right thing to do. And to some extent, that's what Finn is thinking, but for the most part, he just wants to get out and needs to use Poe as a pilot. And Poe instantly sees that. He sees that he's not like completely lying in the sense of like he shouldn't trust him. He's just kind of like, this guy just doesn't want to tell me that he wants me as a pilot. But I can call him out on that. And it was a nice scene where he's just like, you need a pilot. I need a pilot. And I suppose just the reaction there, the fact that for Poe, this is probably the first time he's ever seen an example of a person as part of the First Order doing anything to help him and it being like sincere, and so he kind of straight away develops a trust, but there's still a long way to go. He gets him to the ship, and he has to he has to teach Finn the controls. He does, and then that's another moment in like their trust developing, in that they're still attached to that tether, but Finn does just enough with the weaponry to kind of allow Poe to kind of break out of the tether, and then when they're outside, he also does a good job as his gunner. And just there's an instant trust that develops there in such a really small amount of time. The scene where Poe basically is the one to kind of come up with the name for FN 2187 as Finn is a really important scene. It's more important. It's probably more important on Finn's side of things than Poe's side of things, in the sense of it's a much bigger character moment that I'll talk about in the Finn video coming up next. But just Poe kind of being like, okay, that's a nice number you've got there, but I want something simple to call you, Finn. He just uses the FN and gives him a name, and it works. He accepts it, and just how excited I suppose that makes Finn, as this kind of first kind of sense of someone giving him an identity outside of just his trooper number. It's a big deal, and Poe to some extent can sense it. He can sense just that Finn is experiencing a lot of kind of new stuff being with Poe. Just the idea that they're kind of having fun escaping here. Like he realizes he's actually a decent shot on in the gunner seat and stuff like that. It's a moment where just in a way like Poe helps Finn to awaken kind of who he actually is. But immediately they're kind of separated. The crash landing happens, and suddenly like that relationship is kind of gone for a lot of the movie. And the only thing that really kind of lingers on is obviously the fact that he takes the jacket. And I do think the jacket, some people over exaggerate the importance of the fact that, like, okay, he takes the jacket, but then the scene where Poe says to Finn, "You can keep it. It looks good on you." It's not that like this jacket was like incredibly important to Poe, like his most prized possession sort of thing. He's been in the Resistance about a year or two at this stage. It really hasn't been that long. This book establishes that he was recruited by Leia from the New Republic Navy to the Resistance because he didn't like the fact that the New Republic was not doing anything to combat the First Order to the extreme that he wanted it to be done. And this is an important thing that I will bring up from this book that I think they can expand on in episode 8 and 9 if they address it. The reason Poe is so loyal to the Resistance, why he joined the Resistance, this kind of splinter group that's not fully supported by the Republic, it's kind of against the law kind of thing, it's kind of a militia almost. The reason he joined is because both of his parents were part of the rebellion. His mother was an ace starfighter, that's where he gets those skills from, and his father was part of Han's attack squad during the mission on Endor to take out the shield generator. The forest moon of Endor, actually, it wasn't Endor itself, to take out the shield generator. So his two parents were like reasonably high up in terms of like the chain of command in terms of notable fighters in the Resistance. And he is so eager to end the First Order because he doesn't want everything that his parents fought for to be for nothing. That the Empire goes away, but the First Order returns, and it's basically the same thing. Their fight has just been for nothing, and he wants to finish that. And that's exactly the kind of same reason that Leia wants to finish the fight as well, because the Resistance are completely aware that the First Order is just the Empire in a different name, different guise. So that's kind of one of the driving forces behind the character, though it's not addressed too drastically in the movie. I think they can definitely do some stuff with that going forward, and I'm excited to see what they do with it. But obviously, the next notable scene is obviously he flies in, to help Han, Finn, Chewie when they're captured by Kylo and stormtroopers and stuff like that. Um, this is an amazing scene. This is potentially one of the best piloting kind of maneuvers we've ever seen ever in Star Wars. And it really makes me like super highly rate Poe as a pilot. Like probably better than Luke, potentially better than Anakin, who I think is very much established in universe to be the best pilot like we've ever heard of in universe. So this what he does here is really impressive. He arrives on the scene and uses the blasters on his X-wing to take out people on the ground, basically right next to all the like Han and Finn. So he just takes out the guys next to them, like avoiding all the good guys. Then focuses his attention on the TIE fighters around and basically just goes on this kind of attack run through the location and takes out about 10 TIE fighters and like 3 or 4 guys on the ground in this really cool flowing motion. It was really impressive to watch like Finn track this pilot and him kind of thinking like, I only know one pilot that good, but as far as I'm aware, Poe's dead, like there's no chance, but this guy's pretty good. And so then the reunion happens afterwards, and it's an important scene because like one, Poe and BB-8 are reunited, and he's just like, oh wow, BB-8, you completed your mission. How on earth did this happen? And then Finn shows up, and instantly Poe realizes that Finn was the one who made that happen. That for the most part, like Poe never really told him about the mission exactly, in the sense of he knew he had a droid, and that it was fairly important. But like it was never really like a thing like where Finn was just gonna go, I'm gonna complete your mission, but he ended up kind of doing it anyway with Rey. And I really liked this reunion because Poe had trusted Finn to a certain degree up to then because he proved himself. He wasn't like some guy trying to like really like use him. Yes, to some extent, like I needed a pilot, but he was really helping him. And I suppose Poe was kind of ready in those early scenes to kind of vouch for Finn as like, okay, this guy's pretty good. He's leaving the First Order. We still have to learn a bit more about him, but I'm definitely going to recommend he join the Resistance. But when he comes back, it's just like, this guy has to join the Resistance. Look at what he did for me after only knowing me for a couple of moments, basically. It's a really important thing for Poe, and that he's really impressed that Finn would do so much for him after only being together for like so long. And obviously Finn, knowing that this guy who helped give him like an identity and name, got him off the First Order base, it's an important relationship for sure. Is it going to be in any way romantic going forward, like a lot of people want? I'm not so sure. I think Oscar Isaacs, obviously in interviews, has been basically saying like he played a romance. He kind of wants he kind of plays the character as like a gay character, and that's fine. Like I think if there's anything that's going to come in that side of things, that will be the case. That somewhere they will do something to canonically reveal that Poe is gay. And I think that's a good move because even though he's not the main character, he is one of the main characters. As I said, one of only 4 Force Awakens characters to get a Disney Infinity figure, and he is notable in like the merchandise as being one of the key characters from the movie. So even Poe being like revealed to be gay would be a really good moment of representation for Star Wars, which in the grand scheme of things doesn't really have that many characters like that or anything. The only one I know off the top of my head is I think there's one of the novels I think has this ruler of like this person who works for the Empire that kind of rules over a certain planet. It's from the book Lords of the Sith. It came out fairly recently, and she has a wife. That's about the closest thing, of at least from what I've read in the Star Wars universe, to there being like another gay character. But this would be important, and in the sense of like, is there really evidence in the movie to show that he really like feels that way about Finn? Potentially in the way some people are reading it. I definitely think a lot of the evidence is more like Poe to Finn, and there's not really much in terms of romantically the other way. So I definitely think if they were to do anything like that, it would be a kind of one-sided relationship on Poe's part, because I do think Finn likes Rey a lot, and that will be what is kind of the romance that they in any way attempt to go for. But I think I think a lot of people will just be happy if they did reveal that Poe was gay, and there's no I don't think there's really any problem to have with that, just because romance is a very small part of the Star Wars universe in general. Like across the 6 movies we have so far, there's really only been like 2 relationships, like Anakin and Padme and Han and Leia, and then like even if you bring the Clone Wars into it, it's like okay, there's a lot of romances that they kind of hint at, like Obi-Wan and Duchess Satine, like was kind of a thing, but Obi-Wan never actually went for it. And then Ahsoka and Lux is like kind of a thing, but again, not really, but maybe it happened afterwards. We're not really sure. So it's never been like a huge thing in the sense of like shipping all the characters together is an important thing in Star Wars. I think Finn and Rey is probably the romance of this trilogy going forward. But if they do even a little thing with Poe and that, it could be interesting. But I don't think that's going to be in any way the focus of his character, any sort of romance or anything. I think maybe they'll do a little bit to just like confirm he's gay, but not actually go for anything, and then just focus on his friendship with Finn and kind of how in just a couple of scenes they came to kind of trust each other very kind of completely. So yeah, there's that, and then of course like the majority of the second half of the movie is primarily focused on look, he's an amazing pilot. He's not just an amazing pilot in terms of his skill. He's an amazing pilot leader, like kind of. He is the leader of Black Squadron for the Resistance, so he's Black leader. He's a very effective leader and also kind of leading by example with his skill. What he does to take out Starkiller Base is very impressive. Leading the bombing run, and then when the hole is opened up by the team on the ground, he flies in his X-wing and takes it out and comes back out safely. It's really impressive, and like there's a few other moments like that, like earlier on in the movie, going back to the scene in the TIE fighter, the fact that he doesn't just immediately go to escape, he actually comes back and does a few kind of like attack runs across the Star Destroyer to take out some of its guns to give them a chance to actually properly escape. That was impressive that on his own, just with Finn as a gunner, he could basically, attack pretty and deal a lot of damage to a Star Destroyer with just one ship. That was pretty impressive. So very incredible pilot, and interesting personality just in terms of his, you know, like cool, calm, collected, very charismatic personality. Again, a little bit like Han. Not as I think cocky as Han, but like the same type of character, and just having confidence in his skills, but being able to just absolutely back them up. And then just moments like when they land and like Finn is brought back in the stretcher, Poe runs straight over to him. He's been injured on the ground. Poe wouldn't have been able to be such a hero in the battle if it wasn't for the team on the ground planting the charges. So, that's a big thing. And what's he going to do going forward is interesting, because I think there's a strong case for it with a lot of pilot characters, that it's very easy for them to just be the pilot in future movies and stuff like that. It's kind of the situation that Hera from Star Wars Rebels is in that she's the pilot captain of the Ghost. She's technically the leader of the team, but she's so focused on being the pilot that she rarely gets involved in like the Jedi stuff with Kanan and Ezra and so on. So I hope that doesn't happen with Poe. I would almost like to see like if Leia's going to be a bigger role in the movie. I doubt she's going to be going on ground missions, so perhaps she will promote Poe to being a kind of like general in the Resistance, and he's also the lead fighter squadron guy. But like he and Finn will like go on missions depending on what they do next with the First Order versus the Resistance. That's what I'd kind of like to see. A bit more of Poe involved in kind of ground battles, and then maybe at some point in the movie there is a kind of fighter battle for him to have. Maybe Rey and Luke return, but they have to do some sort of Jedi thing with the Force, and then like Poe and Finn like take over the Falcon for like Poe, Finn, and like Chewie or something like that take over the Falcon for like the big pilot fighter battle in the next movie or something like that. I think that would be pretty cool. It'd give a moment for like Poe and Rey to like properly meet, with her kind of handing over the Falcon to Poe for the battle, and like talking to him, and them getting to know each other, respect each other as pilots, but also her respect him because she brought Luke back, or and is a Force user, Jedi. And I suppose if they ever go anywhere with the whole potentially like Poe liking Finn romantically, they could do something along the lines of him then seeing what Rey sees in what him then seeing what Finn sees in Rey, and like seeing how close they are or something like that. They could do some nice emotional stuff if they do go down that road, though I'm not sure if they will. So that's about all I want to talk about with Poe. It's very hard, I think, to predict his exact involvement in the next movie, just because we don't know exactly what the nature of the First Order versus Resistance battle is going to be going forward. Partly because the movie was very vague in general about like the two factions and like how big they are and how much control they have, that sort of thing. But Poe being much more of a leader of the Resistance rather than just pilot is definitely something I want to see going forward. Maybe him involved in more ground battles using his blaster with Finn. That would be cool. That a lot of the scenes between them, we saw like Poe being amazing and really showing Finn how great of a pilot he is. I'd actually like to see in ground engagements, perhaps Finn really show Poe how good of a soldier he is, because it is established in this book that he was basically the best stormtrooper in terms of skills from his group of cadets. It's just that he didn't have the heart to like kill people and be cruel like the First Order wanted them to, so he kind of went down the pecking order because of that. But Poe, really interesting character. I wished he would have been in the movie a little bit more, just like a scene here or there to develop other relationships, and that, like, as I said, Poe and Rey never like really met on screen. I think there might have been a scene where like they were in the same room together, but they never talk to each other in this movie. I don't think that's like a flaw or anything like that with the movie. Maybe they will, as I said, meet in the next movie. But it was just like, like it would have been nice to get to see him get introduced to other characters. But I think the fan following is really good. That he's really taken off as a character despite his relatively minor role in the movie. So I think absolutely the writers and stuff like that will endeavour to use him a lot more going forward. But yeah, Poe Dameron, very successful character. Next video in this series is going to be all about Finn. There'll be a little bit more to talk about than Poe, I think, just because there is more of a character arc here for Finn, though the same sort of mystery with regards to what he's going to be up to in the next movie. So we'll discuss that next time. But for now, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.